What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another highly combustible reaction. We're jumping into the next one on our Simon Whistler journey. This man could talk to you about anything and keep you entertained. Get over, show all of the channels that he has some love, mega projects, and the rest. The links will be right there inside the description. Chernobyl's new safe confinement. The world's largest, I said it again. I just said that in the Discord. Largest movable object. Let's jump in. Let's check it out together. See what we got. Let's roll.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mega Project.
Hey, we are going to cut this into two different parts. If we get to this to the part where I stop and you want to keep watching it, definitely go over it. The link's right there inside of the description. I really definitely appreciate the request. Martine, let's do it.
My name is Simon, and today we're looking at the Chernobyl new safe confinement. So let's just crack on, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's crack on. Jolly good, chap.
Friday, the 25th of April, 1986. It ended just as any other day would at the Chernobyl power station. As the clock ticked past midnight, those inside and the 47,500 inhabitants of nearby Pripyat remained unaware of the catastrophe that was about to unfold. An event so disastrous that its effects are still being felt today, over 30 years later. It was just after 1 a.m. when a test on an RBMK-type nuclear reactor began. At this point, it was 10 hours behind schedule, meaning the inexperienced night crew was now in charge of this delicate operation, and I can tell you, when you are testing things on nuclear reactors, not a good idea to use inexperienced people. Anyway, as the test began, all seemed normal. Power was slowly decreased in line with the protocol, but suddenly it plummeted to almost zero. Those in the control room were only able to restore some power, which essentially left the reactor dangerously unstable. A combination of poor quality, design flaws, and mismanagement led to the world's first nuclear meltdown, and those three things hardly a surprise when you realize that this was run by the USSR. Anyway, astonishingly, or maybe not, considering it was the Soviets, it took a few days for the magnitude of the disaster to take effect. Soviet authorities were quick to downplay the events, while those on the ground in Chernobyl frantically did what they could, but even they did not fully understand the implications of what had just happened. And I realize we're doing a bit of a history of Chernobyl here. I guess this is for everyone, which is, what, one person who hasn't seen the HBO special on this?
Someone has to start telling the truth.
But we'll get into the new confinement in just a moment. This is kind of really important to set the scene. Now, it wasn't until May the 4th that the fire was brought under control and the wreckage of Chernobyl could be properly surveyed.
You could tell me the entire history of Chernobyl, and I'm here for it. I will pay attention to Simon Whistler. I don't know. There's something about him. He just keeps you right there. You want to know what's coming next. He makes it fun to learn with his voice.
An exclusion zone of 10 kilometers, that's 6.2 miles for those of us who don't speak metric, were set around the stricken power plant after 36 hours, and this was later increased to 30 kilometers, that's 19 miles, as the entire population of Pripyat was evacuated. And as you probably know, they would never return. I believe that exclusion zone is actually now 50 kilometers. A little bit of insight here. I've actually been to Chernobyl. I went a couple of years ago, I think in 2018. Extremely interesting, and that exclusion zone is massive. Back to the story. Nothing like this had ever happened before, and while no doubt there must have been contingency plans for such an event.
I don't know that I would personally take a trip, but I think I would like to speak to some people that have taken trips.
Nothing like this had ever happened before, and while no doubt there must have been contingency plans for such an event, the Soviet authorities were acting blind. It quickly became apparent that it would be impossible to fix what had happened with radiation levels within the reactor, now just unimaginably high, and as you know, you can't just get rid of those. Robots were sent in, and they basically suffered a ton of mechanical problems, and then the authorities basically were left with a decision to send thousands of workers into the area, including many who were sent up to the roof of the reactor who were removing debris. Now, it's probably safe to say that there were few places on the planet at that time that were more dangerous than that reactor roof. These men would have been exposed to insane amounts of radiation, and in that HBO series, you can see when they go onto the roof, they're only allowed to go out for, was it like 60 or 90 seconds? Maybe it was even less, just to throw some debris off the roof or collect it And indeed, these people and around the area, there's increased levels of cancer because of the radiation. The World Health Organization estimates that 240,000 people were brought to Chernobyl between 1986 and 1987, with others claiming that the figure was closer to 1 million, and they came to be known as the liquidators. One spoke with the BBC a few years back and said, "We worked in 3 shifts, but only for 5 to 7 minutes at a time because of the danger. After finishing, we'd throw our clothes in the garbage."
That's hardcore. I don't even think that you could pay me enough money to go in there to do something like that. Not when you know that, hey, you're going to be exposed to all kinds of craziness. 90 seconds at a time. No, thank you. I think I would take any other dangerous job on the planet than that one. That's a hardcore group of people.
The number of those who died as a result of the Chernobyl disaster has been intensely debated ever since. While initial fatalities were set at just 42, the numbers in the following years were enormous, with estimates ranging from 4,000 to beyond 100,000. And that's one thing with radiation, it very rarely kills someone instantly just like that, and you've probably seen this in movies and stuff, the fatalities happen much later. Eventually, it was decided that the entire reactor would need to be covered in order to prevent any further radioactive emissions. 24 days after the disaster, planning began on what came to be known as the sarcophagus. And it's easy to focus on numbers here. More than 400,000 cubic meters of concrete, as well as 7,300 tons of metal framework, went into the construction of this enormous structure over the course of 206 days. But this only begins to tell the story. Before this, coal miners were brought in to burrow beneath the reactor in order to install a cooling slab and prevent the nuclear fuel from burning through. The efforts of those 400 miners who dug a 168-meter, 551 feet trench under the leaking reactor in the sweltering heat, it remains one of the most astonishing, if underreported, tales from Chernobyl. So this sarcophagus was completed by November 1986, but the relief, if there was any, was pretty short-lived. In 1988, so just 2 years later, Soviet scientists announced that the structure would only last 20 to 30 years before major restoration work was needed. In their haste to construct it, many corners had been cut. A lot of the building's joints had not been correctly sealed, while openings in the roof had eventually allowed rainwater to enter and corrosion to set in. And it's easy to blame the Soviets for, these errors in construction, but the fact that they built such an enormous building in such a short time to contain it is impressive in itself, and that it could last 20 to 30 years is somewhat impressive. Anyway, this all comes to the crux of today's video, and that's the fact that a new structure was needed, and, well, this one needed to last a lot longer. In 1992, an international competition to design a replacement for the concrete sarcophagus was launched.
A competition? Hell yes. That's a great way to find the best and brightest ideas.
This was new grounds for everybody involved. Unsurprisingly, there hadn't been any nuclear disasters previously, so no one knew how to build a giant sarcophagus for containing one. Essentially, what they were going to design had to be completely unique. Now, the function of the structure, it might be obvious, but it was actually broken in 2. The first was to limit radiation impact on the public, the personnel working there, and the environment. And that's an interesting thing about Chernobyl. When I was there are people still working at Chernobyl. I mean, the power plant was actually, I believe it was making energy until the year 2000. Now, this protection would not only need to be a structure that could hold the radiation at bay on a daily basis, but it had to be designed in such a way that it would continue to function correctly even after further accidents or if there was some sort of disaster. The structure would need to be able to survive an F3 tornado, significant snow accumulation on top of it, as well as general impacts to the steel casing, anything from a missed hammer blow to a vehicle striking it. It's going to be there for a long time, so they had to account for all of these possibilities. Then there's also temperature to consider. Ukraine has seriously volatile weather, and they needed to build this thing to withstand minus 43 Celsius, which is minus 45 Fahrenheit, all the way up to plus 45 Celsius, which is 113 Fahrenheit. Secondly, and perhaps
that is a wide range of damn temperatures that this thing had. There's too much in it. There's too much planning and thinking that we're gonna have to. All of this had to be taken into consideration. It's insane. I'm already damn intrigued. We haven't seen the building.
It had to provide technical support. This wasn't simply a structure that was going to cover the reactor and then they could just forget about it. Once the new safe confinement was in place, it would need to provide support for cranes in order to begin basically clearing the damaged structure within. So within that thing, there are lots of cranes going to work. Both the concrete sarcophagus and parts of the original building, they need to be painstakingly removed. So essentially, this structure isn't just there to encase the reactor, it does the job of slowly decommissioning it as well. But even this is just the tip of the iceberg. This would need to become a fully functioning system that could monitor radioactive waste, water level, as well as general maintenance throughout the site for years to come. In short, they needed to design an impenetrable fortress, a building site, and a sophisticated monitoring system all in one, and it was going to be absolutely massive. Out of a total of 392 entries to the competition, a French design was chosen. Second place was a British design, and this was slightly different from everything else because it proposed a sliding arch mechanism rather than an immovable structure. A European study then followed this contest in order to ascertain the best qualities from each design, and the British arc was eventually incorporated into the French model that won, while a French consortium named Navarca was chosen to design the new sliding arch. This was a radical design that would eventually lead to the creation of the largest movable object in the world. An enormous arch would be constructed in front of the reactor, and then it would slide over it on these purpose-built rails, and then sections on the front and back would complete the structure. And, I mean, it sounds immense, but fairly simple. Now, the size of the structure was staggering. At 92.5 meters high, that's 303.5 feet.
Jesus Christ, that's
Statue of Liberty,
huge.
and its internal arch spans 245 meters, that's 803.8 feet, which makes it larger than Wembley Stadium. And I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a British reference, but Wembley Stadium is absolutely massive. Indeed, to give you some perspective.
But still, can you imagine a stadium or a coliseum picking up and just moving? Like, come on. That's hardcore that you had to make it move. This is the way the people's brains think it's not normal.
On this, the Colosseum in Rome
Yeah.
could easily fit inside Wembley Stadium. So just keep in mind when you're
That's
imagining
insane.
the new safe confinement, bigger than that. Now, this thing is a technological wonder. When you look at pictures of it, kind of looks like a massive shed or an aeroplane hangar. But don't let that deceive you. And going up and seeing this thing when it's over Chernobyl, it is absolutely massive. But this megastructure deserves to be studied and marveled at, not just simply because of its size, but because of the dangers that lie within. This is one of the most contaminated areas in the world, so the new safe confinement needs to be much more than just an eye-catching monument to human achievements. It needed to be an airtight prison. Work was a really slow and crawling process. Since 1998, the Shelter Implementation Plan, SIP, had been painstakingly moving through a series of steps that would clean up the area and eventually set the foundations for the new safe confinement.
Wait a second. Right here is where we're going to have to pause. We will finish this up tomorrow 100%. I'm super intrigued. I don't even know what to say. Like, logistically, as a logistician, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at how many people is it gonna take? How many painstaking man hours is it gonna take? What other kind of engineering is gonna be required to go into it? Like, this is something unheard of, something unseen, something that's going to be damn near magical to people when the time is done. But monumental thinkers out there in the world make shit like this happen all the time, and we don't always see it, and we don't always get to appreciate it. This is the first time I'm heard about this. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued. I definitely want to see some more. I just got some things to do later on today, which is why we got to be short for reactions today. Get over, if you want to keep on watching it, by all means, Simon Whistler's link is right there inside of the description. Get over, show mega projects, all the love in the world. I'll see you tomorrow for part 2. Till the next one, I'm Combustible. You guys be happy, healthy, stable. Love you to the moon and back. Peace.